for those of us who grew up with Star Wars, we had a very definitive notion of what it is. You know, it's droids and aliens and Jedi that used to be and Jedi that will be. And then, of course, you know, the prequels and sequels and other sequels and Disney Pluses came along, and that has really changed the way pop culture sees it. In fact, my generation, I was born in 1978, so I guess I'm the end of Generation X, and the way Generation Z sees Star Wars are very, very different. I've had some conversations with some Gen Zers recently about it and wanted to share that. Let's jump in on Spector Creative. Hey guys, welcome to Spector Creative. I'm Scott Toy Guru Neitlich, your host, and it is a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us and giving us some of your time today to talk pop culture and toys and fun and stuff. I'm a collector, I'm a professional toy maker, I'm an author. I've never been a kangaroo boxer, but maybe one day. So, growing up, I was an original trilogy, not just fan, but, you know, that was my life, right? These toys were my childhood. This was how we created Star Wars adventures because there were no VCRs or on-demand or anything. I think there was like an audio book and a picture book, and then these guys. You can see how much they're played with, very much so, and loved. So, along comes a new generation, and Star Wars, like the Beatles and the Bible and Elvis Presley before them, have shown them their multi-generational pop culture content doesn't always work. You know, you don't exactly see people becoming huge, I don't know, say Planet of the Apes fans these days. I mean, yeah, there's some, but it's not like Star Wars, which came out roughly about the same time in pop culture, the late 70s. So not everything has the legs, they say, Star Wars has. What really has interested me is the way the current generation views Anakin. And let me talk about that for a second. So, when we only had episodes 4, 5, and 6, growing up in the 80s and 90s, and the idea of the prequels was this, like, maybe one-day dream, and all we really knew about Anakin was, you know, him showing up in Endor at the very end as a ghost, and a Force spirit, sorry, China, no ghosts, and you know, Obi-Wan having a few conversations with Luke about how, you know, Obi-Wan or Anakin was the best starfighter pilot in the galaxy, and he was also a good friend, and he thought he could train him as well as Yoda. You know, all these things that we expected to see in the prequels that weren't. You know, like Luke recognizing Dagobah and Leia knowing who her mother was. Ugh. To me, that was the most disappointing thing about the prequels, is it just didn't jive with all of the original trilogy collection setups. But I guess that's a video for another time. In fact, I think I already made that video a few years ago. Try to link it at the end here. All right, so with that said, the idea of, you know, Anakin Skywalker was always like a mystery. You know, who was this guy? You know, what kind of Jedi was? We knew he fell into some kind of lava pit and became Darth Vader, because that's what it said in the Return of the Jedi novelization, which is the only time that was ever actually addressed. And then obviously in some source books that were quoting that. So, you know, growing up, yeah, I mean, you know, this was our Anakin, or the old Kenner one was. This is a Hasbro version, but, you know, old man Anakin. I think that one's over on my other shelf. But yeah, this, you know, we had no idea of, you know, we knew he was in the Clone Wars. We didn't really even know what the Clone Wars were. And, you know, now the idea of who is Anakin is a very kind of different thing, because we've now seen that. And a lot of older fans like myself are always talking about the proper way to watch Star Wars, right? Do you watch it in chronological order, or do you watch it in order that it came out? You mean 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9? Yeah, it gets confusing. And a lot of people even say, like, skip 1, you know, watch 4, 5, 3, like 2, 3, 6, or, you know, all sorts of things. I still say, just see 4, 5, and 6. Let your imagination run wild. But knowing that not everyone can do that, what has really surprised me are some of the takeaways that kind of modern generation has about Star Wars. Case in point, Generation Z friends went to go see, you know, episode 1, 2, and 3, and they came back. They're like, "Where's Luke and Leia and Chewbacca?" I thought they were the ones in Star Wars. They had no idea who any of these characters are, because even though that was their first experience with Star Wars, they know it from pop culture because of the original movie. I can't overestimate how much the original movie, which was just called Star Wars, you know, it wasn't even called A New Hope for another 2 years, that movie is so much more well known in pop culture than anything else. You know, beyond the Ewok adventure and the Droids cartoon and the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew and Revenge of the Sith, all of that stuff. It's not just like a little bit more, it's like a grain of sand versus a desert. Most people in the world know Star Wars and they just know it as that name. They don't even, they don't know anything else, and they could probably name 3 characters: Darth Vader, C-3PO, and Chewbacca, or R2-D2, maybe Yoda. And then you get into the people who know Luke, Leia, and Han. We are so used to knowing these as, the movies are almost like religious texts to us. I mean, heck, in England, you can be a Jedi as your religion. That, it's become such a big part of our lives that it's so easy to forget that the vast majority of the world has no idea there's honestly even more movies and content out there other than the original movie. Beyond that, the idea of watching, what order to watch them, people pick up Disney Plus and they say, oh, there's 1, 2, 3. Okay, I guess I should start there. I think one of the biggest eye-opening experiences I had talking to a Generation Zer at my day job, they after watching episode 3, she came to me and she's like, that was like such a shocking ending. And I'm like, wait, you mean like you're talking about the end of Empire Strikes Back, right? Luke, I am your father. No, wait, what? That happens? No, I'm talking about the end of episode 3. Our hero Anakin becomes Darth Vader. I didn't see that coming. I was like, whoa, that is the big surprise? Yeah, that's like the big shocker for this generation. No spoiler alerts aside. It's not that Vader is Luke's father. It's that Anakin is Vader. Because when you watch it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 order, yeah, I guess that's a big surprise if you had no idea that was going to happen, despite it being on the episode 1 poster, and episode 2 poster, and episode 3 poster. But, we all knew that growing up. We came into episode 3 knowing that was going to be the story of Anakin becoming Vader. But this new generation that is growing up in a prequel, they're prequel natives, if you will, versus we were prequel waiters. We were waiting for the prequels. The generation now, they were born after the prequels came out. Kind of mind-blowing that people who were born after the prequels came out are now going into the workforce. So their first experience with Star Wars being the prequels sets the tone, and to them, the idea that this hero they just grew up with for 2 movies suddenly becomes a bad guy in a giant armor suit and betrays everyone, it was like, whoa, mind-blowing. Which blew my mind, because for us, it's always been like, wow, that really destroys the whole Luke, I am your father moment at the end of Empire. It's not Luke, I am your father. It's no, Luke, I am your father. One of the most misquoted quotes of all time, like, beam me up, Scotty, or elementary, my dear Watson. None of those things are actually spoken, ever, in pop culture. Maybe on, like, Hallmark cards. So yeah, it's a very different experience growing up as the prequels and the Clone Wars as your gateway into Star Wars versus the original trilogy collection. And but I think the fact that things like the Return to Tatooine and the HasLab Cantina hit so well and continue to do well in the aftermarket, I think is really showing how much that culture-changing first film, and I'm not talking episode 1, I'm talking about 1977, episode 4, A New Hope, it's so much more significant than we give it credit for. And it may not even be the best Star Wars film. We all know Empire is the best one. But it changed cinema and pop culture so much. You really got to watch a lot of 1950s sci-fi to understand how different Star Wars was. I mean, we live in this world where we've got so many Star Wars, rip-offs. But it was so different. It was so groundbreaking at the time. Go watch some, Japanese Jidaguki films like Kiro Kurosawa. Go watch, Them and Invasion of the Saucer People and, It Came from Outer Space. When you see how sci-fi was treated before Star Wars, you realize how huge and groundbreaking it was, and how groundbreaking the toys were, and the cantina scene, and the special effects. I mean, here's how I'll end this video. I watched the special edition in episode 1 recently, and the added special effects, the CGI, like Watto and the little droid behind the Sand Trooper when they're asking Obi-Wan, whose droids are these? And, oh gosh, and that Ronto that walks across Mos Eisley. I feel like the new special effects just don't hold up. I mean, even in episode 1 I watched, and the CGI looks like cartoony running across the screen. It doesn't look like, it doesn't have the same shadow as the actors, and it just looks out of place. Versus in A New Hope, all the on-screen droids and aliens, even though the masks were made of rubber and had no mouthpieces and couldn't move, they still look better than Watto. Like, they look real. And gosh, I feel like that is also what's just going to keep that first movie forever, because yeah, it holds up. It holds up way more than most movies from the 70s. Although The Great Train Robbery with Sean Connery and Donald Sutherland, if you like Ocean's 11, go watch that. It's like a Victorian version of Ocean's 11. Great Train Robbery with Michael Crichton. Check it out. Also a 1970s movie that holds up. Well, Jaws holds up. Godfather holds up. Obviously, movies from the 70s hold up, but a lot don't. And, we as Star Wars fans forget our kind of place in this, and the fact that we know so much more about, this. We can tell you the difference between an A-wing and a Y-wing, and 90% of the public could not tell you the name of the Millennium Falcon. So, yeah, there's some reality check for you. All right, I hope this wasn't too mind-blowing, but an interesting thing to talk about. Have you experienced this with other people having different surprises from Star Wars? Let me know in the comments below. I love to read them. I comment back when I can, and I thank you very much for spending time with us today. I'll see you guys in the next video.